Hi friends, it's Lisa Turner here, and I thought I would do this little Facebook Live on the idea of judgment, hierarchy, good and bad hierarchy, and spiritual leadership. So I had a question that came in, and it was somebody was saying that they knew that they were really spiritually evolved and they were pretty awake. But as soon as they were thinking that, then they started to give themselves a hard time, because then they're thinking, well, hang on, that means that I'm in judgment. I'm judging that I'm more evolved than someone else. And then they would kind of get themselves tangled up in this knot. So I had a bit of a think about it. And here's what I'm thinking. I think judgment that something is good or bad, here's the thing. As soon as you say judgment is bad, guess what? You're in judgment. You see the paradox. So just the idea of judgment creates judgment, which then creates judgment. And then you get your knickers in a twist. So rather than thinking of judgment, like judging something as good or bad, think about it as judging it as being where it is. And the idea of that there are some hierarchies that are good and serve us, and some that are maybe not so good. So first of all, let's look at the idea of being more evolved than someone else. Well, if we take out this idea of there's any judgment that being more evolved is better, let's just lose that. You can then say, well, yeah, you know what? I am pretty evolved. I'm pretty awake. And I'm still more to do, because let's face it, there always is. So rather than think, so if we just take that out, take the idea that being more evolved than someone else is good or bad. And, it is what it is. And if you think about it in terms of so you wouldn't judge it bad for a child to be small and say, what are you doing being only 2 foot tall or 3 foot tall or whatever you are? It's like, what's going on there? Like, why don't you grow up? When are you going to grow up? And, I used to say this jokingly to my daughter, and I said, when are you going to grow up? And she would say, when I'm a grown up. We had this little joke that we did. And it kind of makes the point. It's like, you don't judge a child for being small. You don't judge a child for being young. You don't judge a child for not being able to read because they can't read yet, because they haven't learned. So rather than thinking of hierarchy, of being, spiritual evolution as being good or bad, it just is what it is. And some people are more spiritually connected and awake than others. And so the other thing I wanted to share is this idea of, let's talk about good and bad hierarchies. So some hierarchies, I would say, and again, as soon as you say it's bad, you're in judgment. So I would say that some hierarchies don't serve us as well as others. So if you think about, let's think about the hierarchy of, well, an atom is contained in a molecule, and you don't say a molecule is better than an atom because there's more stuff there. Or then a molecule would be, make up a more complex chemical compound, or, a cell, say, of a living organism. So an atom makes a molecule, makes a cell, and you don't say a cell is better than a molecule. And then a cell would make up an organ, and then an organ would make up a body, and then a body, one individual would make up a group, and the group would make up part of a society. And if we just start thinking about, that's just a hierarchy of evolution. You get single-celled organisms, and you get really complex ones. And it just means they've been hanging around longer. Typically, that's all it means. So that's just a hierarchy. It's just a hierarchy of evolution that's gone from, it's gone from here to here, and that's just where it is. But then there are hierarchies that maybe don't serve us so well, and how it's easy to slightly get them confused or get confusion about them. So think about the hierarchy of, say, slave and master. Probably not a great one, because it creates separation. You see, I think if we think about it, that the whole idea of spiritual evolution is to become one, is to create unity, is to recognize that we are all one. And it's okay to do that, and it's okay to say, I'm more evolved than someone else, but they're still part of me. That's still an aspect of me. Maybe it's an aspect of who I was 10 years ago, or maybe it's an aspect of who somebody else who you might judge as being more evolved than you might say, well, that's where I could be. That's where I'm going. So if you think about, so that's just a hierarchy that doesn't really create separation. It creates a continuum where we're all part of that continuum, versus something like slavery, slavery where you have slave and master. Then the slave owner is separate from and considering themselves superior to the slave. So that's obviously a less, that you could judge that as a bad hierarchy only because it creates separation. So there's really only, and you'll probably hear me say this a lot because it's one of the themes that's kind of running through the whole evolution of the planet right now, that there are really only two states that anyone can be in. And that's, you're either in the state of love, connection, unity, or you are striving to achieve that. You are craving that. So when you're in a place of, let's call it separation, it's not that this makes you a bad person or any individual a bad person. And we could probably observe people who you would label and observe to be exhibiting the behavior of separateness. And because when we are separate, when we're separate from someone else, we would be like, when you experience yourself as being separate from other people, separate from your community, separate from source, that's when you experience lack, fear, and emotional pain. And when you're in that, whether you're conscious of it or not, you will crave that. So when you observe behaviors in other people that are, you would say that person, not very evolved. Well, let's replace not evolved with not connected or not experiencing themselves as being consciously connected. And so when they're not experiencing themselves as being consciously connected, anyone who's in that state of disconnect will exhibit behavior that will look like insanity. So this is the only reason, the only way by which we can wage war on another country is because we experience that group of people as separate to us, and therefore we must fear them, we must hate them, we must say negative, bad, horrible things about them, and ultimately we must go out and kill them or stop them killing us by killing them first, or killing them before they kill us, or killing them as they start to kill us. So the only way you can do that, the only way you can create that kind of behavior, and this is true, when you're waging emotional war or psychological warfare on other people in your community, other people that you know. So when you start talking about or acting towards others in a way, and I'm not talking about you individual, I'm just when a person does this, the reason they are doing that is because they are experiencing themselves as separate. So one of the things you can do is you can start to support them to feel that they aren't separate, that they are connected. Because as soon as you do that, now you can do this in your behavior to the other person, but you can also do this inside yourself. So you can start to think about them as connected and start to perceive them, because what you perceive in another is within you, as above, so below. So, what you see in another is within you. So if you experience separation in another, then somewhere you're feeling not totally connected, find where that is in yourself. And it won't be in the same behavior, it won't be in the same place as they're exhibiting it, just kind of by definition almost. So find where that place of separation is within yourself, heal that up within you, and then you will start to observe them being more reconnected. And this is where you can start coming from a place of compassion as well. Because if we go back to that original idea of hierarchy and judgment, it's like if we judge, oh, that person's really unevolved, how bad is that, right? Well, that means you're separate from, you perceive yourself as being separate to them. And if you perceive yourself as being separate to them, then you're not connected. So the first place to connect is with them. Find out where that person, that behavior that person is exhibiting is within you. Now that's a whole other Facebook Live. That's a whole other training on how to do that. But it's a really powerful technique. So, and this brings me to the final thought that I wanted to share with you today, which is this idea of spiritual leadership. Because what a spiritual leader does, is they start from, and this is where the paradox is, they start from observing the world not as quite as they would like it to be. Okay? And the reason they're doing that is because they are in a place of separation. But this is what we're going to do. We're going to use this for good. Right? So what you do is you observe the world and you go, there are a lot of not totally awake people who are exhibiting a lot of not totally awake and not totally supportive and healthy behavior that could ultimately create the whole, destruction of great areas of land, countries, great, and ultimately, potentially, we have technologically, we have the ability to destroy the whole planet, to completely, destroy the ecology of the planet. It will exist as a rock, but nothing more. So if we start thinking about, if we observe other people who are behaving in a way that is unevolved, the first thing we do is we would create a vision. So this is how you start these are the traits of a spiritual leader. So, and, post in the comments. And if you're listening to this in the replay, still not listening to it live, watching the replay, still go and post. I will step back, I'll pop back in and chat to you about this as well in the comments. So notice so who in the world and what do you notice in the world that you wish was different? Like maybe you wish the economy was different. Maybe you wish we were doing Brexit faster. Maybe you wish we weren't doing Brexit. Maybe you wish the EU had never been invented. Maybe you wish some different stuff was happening in the Americas. Maybe you wish some different stuff was happening in the world's response to, say, what's going on in the flooding in the India and Asia right now. The earthquakes in Mexico, the hurricanes that are hitting all over the place. Like, what are you noticing in the world? What do you notice in the world that you wish was different? So that's the first thing. So if you can think of something that you think, I wish that was different. I wish the economy was different, society was different, schools were different. I was speaking to someone really passionate about schooling and how they don't think it's done in the best way right now in the UK. So what do you think, what do you wish would be different in the world? And it might be your individual world. So that's the first thing. And that actually comes from a desire from source to create a reconnection, a spiritual awakening. One of the things that I've been channeling in a lot recently is about this idea that the planet, the species, the human species, is on the brink of the next spiritual evolution and revolution. And that so what's likely to happen is that we're at this tipping point, and that, it's like, think about a tipping point, you can go one way and the other. That's how it works. We're right now at this point where we could tip to the point of total destruction of the planet and of the species and of society. Or we could tip to the place of complete awakening, like a peace and a harmony that you can almost not imagine. So that's, we're right at this tipping point. Now, here's the really exciting thing. What's going to tip us towards the spiritual awakening end of the spectrum? What's going to tip us there? It's you awakening yourself. And when you choose to do that, you by definition become a spiritual leader. A spiritual leader is nothing more, nothing less than someone who has chosen to be on the awakened side. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means that you choose to be aware of when you're not experiencing being awakened, when you're experiencing disconnect and going, oh, hang on, whoa, I'm experiencing disconnect. I'm not experiencing unity right now. I'm not experiencing myself as, I'm experiencing myself as, say, being attacked. And therefore, the only way I could experience myself as being attacked is if I'm perceiving that person or that group of people to be separate to me. So you bring yourself back to reconnection. You bring yourself back to being awake. And the truth about awakening is, we're already awake. We've just forgotten it. Have you ever had that experience where you've woken up in the morning and you've kind of sleepwalked through your whole morning routine? You find yourself driving to work or, being on the bus, and there you are, and you think, well, I don't even remember getting out of bed this morning. Or I know I drank a cup of coffee, but I can't remember making it or drinking it, as an example. That's a sign that you're awake, but you've forgotten that you're awake because you're sort of on this autopilot. So that's the first trait of spiritual leadership, is that you observe the world and you're inspired and have this desire to create something different. The second trait of a spiritual leader is you have a vision for what that difference is. You have a vision for what that would look like. And as I've described, it's probably something along the lines of being us being a whole lot more peaceful, a whole lot more loving and kind towards each other, generous towards each other, having less fear, less separation, more connection, more unity. And, that vision might be a small vision of what's happening on, in your own family. Like if you're experiencing disconnect and, you know, bickering and squabbling in your family, then you're in a place of, you know, not, you know, everyone in your family's forgotten they're awake, including you. So the spiritual leader will have a vision of, okay, let's all awaken, let's reconnect. And the vision, the inspiration for something different, you have that inspiration and desire for something different. You have the vision for what that different thing is. You also have impact. Now, impact is all about results. Impact means that you don't just sit there, you know, meditating and, oh, I hope it gets better. Oh, I so hope it gets better. It's like, that's not it. Like, meditating is really important for lots of reasons, but real impact comes from a whole bunch of things. It comes from, and it really is about the results, the real world results. You know, in the HUNA training that I've done, we talk about the idea that it doesn't really matter what you do. It just matters, like, does it work? You know, I don't care what you believe. I don't care what actions you take, but does it work in the sense of, given the result you were trying to achieve, did you get that result? And were there any other negative consequences and side effects? Yeah. So impact, being a spiritual leader means you have impact. Okay. And it's not the final one. There's actually 7 traits of spiritual leadership. So I'm only sharing a few here. The other one is influence. And influence is where you have this ability to spread and share that vision and get other people enrolled in just kind of holding that vision and creating that space. Now, that might be that they, you know, being a spiritual leader might mean you create some kind of environment where others follow you and support you to achieve this outcome that you have the vision for. And it might be that, you know, it might be in the context of just changing your family, might be that you're going to be running some kind of, you know, spiritual business where you're inspiring and teaching and assisting others to reconnect. Maybe it's being a holistic practitioner, whatever it is. There's some kind of influence. You're able to influence other people and influence them to make different choices, behave differently, and that all comes from inspiring them to reconnect and enabling them to reconnect. And by the way, a lot of people think, you know, the way that we get people to reconnect is just going, hey, everybody, just reconnect. Just go do that. Like, if that worked, we'd all be reconnected and levitating right now. So the fact is that clearly doesn't fully work. There's something else. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we need to change within ourselves, within our neurology. Now, this is something we really work at and really specialize in Psycademy. This is something I've developed, a lot of technology that enable people to, and the thing is, like, we use this word to reconnect, but it's actually just to remind them that they were always connected and give them and enable them to have a conscious experience of that, is perhaps a better way of thinking about it. Now, I am running a whole webinar on this, and this is happening on Thursday the 14th at 2 o'clock. And what I will do is I will post the link either above or below or both, because as above, so below, right? So I've got to do both, haven't I? I will post a link where you can register for that webinar. It's completely free. This training is all about how it's how we can step into our spiritual leadership qualities. It's called, Are You a Spiritual Leader in Disguise? Because a lot of people are spiritual leaders, but they wouldn't necessarily think of themselves as that. So there's a whole bunch of really super stuff you're going to learn on this, get from this training, like the traits, the qualities of spiritual leadership. I'm going to share with you some things that I probably won't ever share at this point in time on a Facebook Live about the evolution of the species, the spiritual awakening, some of the things we need to look out for, some of the things that we can do to really empower ourselves. Because it's like there's this wave of spiritual awakening. And, you know, I talked about that tipping point, right? You're either on the helping side of the tipping point or you're on the not helping side of the tipping point. Okay. And you know, that's just the way it is. So you're either helping or you're actually getting in the way. There is no, you know, there is no stasis. Staying static doesn't really exist. So, so it's how you can, this whole wave of evolution is happening, right? It's happening and it's going to happen. So the thing is, what do you want to do? Like, how do you want to ride that wave? Because there'll be some amazing opportunities There'll be some amazing things that you might want to watch out for, because things that are probably going to be challenging, some challenges for certain people. And those people who are choosing actively to not awaken, they're kind of, I think they're going to get a little bit moan over. So you know what, just tune into the webinar. It's completely free. I'll pop the link above and below. And you can join me on that webinar, and we will go. So we're going to do the traits of spiritual leadership. Exactly what does your higher self want for you? How to, so the prediction for what's happening, and some of the things that I've been channeling in, some insights, and also I'll be there to answer your questions. Speaking of which, if you have any questions, either pop them here now, or if you're listening to the replay later, that's cool. That's great. Watch the replay and pop a question in the comments. I'll pop back and I'll answer those questions. So, yeah, so we covered the idea of judgment, good and bad hierarchies, separation, and how you're either separate, or you're either connected or separate. And when you're experiencing separation, that's when anyone's experiencing separation, that's when they're forgotten that they're awake, and that's when they behave in ways that aren't necessarily helpful or supportive. So, yes, it'd be great to see you on that webinar. So completely free training. So the stuff that I've been channeling in for this, things I've never ever shared before, and how it all, I like it because I'm an engineer. I like it when it all fits together as a really nice model. I've got a really nice model, the exact steps you need to take for you to activate those qualities of spiritual leadership. Now, whether you want to run a, huge spiritual empire, that's great. Or whether you just want to change yourself, that's great. Because the way to awaken the species is to awaken yourself. The way to awaken yourself is to awaken the species. The way to evolve the species is to evolve yourself. The way to evolve yourself is to evolve the species, to assist another to evolve. And by the way, this tipping point, we don't need the majority of the population. We don't need 51%. Yeah, actually, energetically, if we have only about 2% of the population who are fully connected in a conscious, ongoing way, then we've tipped. We've tipped. So, are you part of that 2%? That's the question. So, any questions? Not seeing any questions. So, if you like this video, tap the little like button. If you loved it, tap the heart button. Share a comment. If you post a comment, if you like the video and you think other people would benefit from this, then please do share it. So, till next time, lots of love. Bye.